We do have some breaking news, though, Will. We'll play the clip. This happens, obviously, on the heels of President Trump's speech, and you had Al Green, who kind of made his statement, who caused chaos and ruckus early on in the speech. It actually felt like it was going to set the tone for the speech, where you eventually had to have Mike Johnson kick him out, officially get someone to take him out. Now, there are consequences with this. This is not uncommon, because I even asked those questions myself, said, hey, well, what happens in this situation typically? What happened when the guy yelled, "You lie"? And you said this was the same thing, but the difference is the way the Democrats are acting, unlike the way Republicans are acting, which is just to take your consequence, which is barely anything for that matter, barely anything, and deal with it. Instead, you had a politically motivated show that happened on the floor.
That's right. So there are 3 punishments the House of Representatives has for their members when they have bad behavior, in their opinion. Expulsion, which is what happened to Congressman George Santos, kicked out of the Congress. You have censure, and then you have reprimand. This was a censure vote. It is where there's a resolution passed that basically shames you for your behavior.
And they basically just go bad.
And then afterwards, you're supposed to, if it passes, you stand in the well and the speaker reads it publicly into the record with you standing there. When you say the well. That's the upfront part of the House of Representatives
making sure people
floor.
know.
But I think we should play it here. What happened after it passed when Speaker Johnson was about to read the censure resolution.
On this vote, the yeas are 224, the nays are 198, with 2 answering present. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Shh. Will Representative Green present himself to the well? By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
Singing there, and of course, Will, you put in that the vote was 224 to 198 to censure Al Green. Again, this is sort of the standard. You may say, hey, freedom of speech, you can do what you want. And look, there are moments where I also think you got to play politics, and was this the best move politically? I'm not sure for the Republicans. Maybe move on. But I get that this is sort of industry standard. This is the practice that they do. It is a very minimal amount of scrutiny, if you will. And of course, they turned it into a moment. And that is something you always have to be thinking about. When you also are working in the media and you're working with something, it's become the number one story now on television. It's become the number one story that we're talking about today. Was that the best move, or was the best move to show the successes that were happening from President Trump, show the successes that were happening around the world, or even what's going on? Rick, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. We just had a bit of chaos breakout, which seems to be now becoming more common and common. And of course, this was over the censuring of Al Green after the outburst and the removal of him during President Trump's speech. We just played the clip. People just saw it. Just wanted to get your thoughts.
Look, I think what we're recognizing here is that the Democrats have no plan. They don't know how to respond. They're actually making it easy for Republicans right now because their messaging feels old. It feels ineffective. And I think, the attacks on Elon, the attacks on President Trump publicly at the State of the Union, all of these things are really making the Democrats just look like whiners and people who are being forced to defend massive waste at USAID or massive waste in the federal government. And I think they're rudderless at this point. They've got to figure out what their message is. There are certain Democrats that are beginning to try, whether it's James Carville or Seth Moulton. People are getting frustrated with the Democratic leadership. Remember, too, though, that they just picked new leaders a couple of weeks ago for the Democratic Party. And the reality is they picked people who are in that same woke cancel culture mode. So they haven't learned their lesson yet, that America looks at Washington and says, we want progress, we want you to cut the budget, we want more power to the people. And the Democrats are left to kind of, do videos about kickboxing. And it's truly, I think, ineffective.
Well, and Rick, what we said yesterday was that the Democrats, my entire life, kind of had a corner on the market of being the cool party. They had Hollywood behind them, celebrities, and, they would go to the Met Gala and make a splash. And so they, for a while, were kind of the cool party for decades. But the Republicans were the ones that had good policy and that were wanting to move the country in the right direction. But it seems like they've lost even that. The one thing that maybe they had a corner in the market on, because you saw the behavior at the address, the joint address before Congress, and then even the way that they disrupted the proceedings of the Congress today, which would have been called an insurrectionist move, I believe, if it were Republicans that tried to stop the business of the House in that manner. But you look at this group and you can't help but think it's like they've lost any of the swagger that they may have been able to have. That President Obama, when he was able to be a celebrity president to some degree because he appealed to people, he was a good speaker, he had that kind of, you wanted to hang out with him sort of vibe. They don't have any of that left, and it really brings to question how would they even be able to rebuild from this?
Look, I think when you look at the representatives in Congress for the Democrats or in the Senate, they are having a problem in that there's a lot of long-term older representatives that have not been able to keep up with the hip brand that the Democrats had in the past. It's not the party of Bill Clinton anymore. I don't think Bill Clinton could actually get the nomination for the Democratic Party. But you do have senators like John Ossoff, for instance, who is young, who is trying to be hip. But when you look at his voting record, he has voted with the far left every single time. He hasn't been able to step away from the Chuck Schumer demands of voting far left. And I think that's their problem. Look, someone like Seth Moulton from Massachusetts has tried. He's tried to step out and say, I don't think that we're going down the right road. You've got Rahm Emanuel has said the same thing. There are people trying, but they're not the power base of the Democratic Party in Congress. The power base of the Democratic Party is Al Green. It's people who are doubling down on the cancel culture and the ineffectiveness. And so there needs to be a reckoning of the Democratic Party leadership. They need to figure out what their message is. They need to figure out who the messengers are. But one thing, I'm old enough to know that we went through this as Republicans a couple of times after Mitt Romney's loss to Obama. We had a real come to Jesus about who we are and who's going to be the messengers. And one of the problems that the Democrats face is that the media doesn't demand that they do this. The media was demanding every day that the Republican Party needs to change or it's going to go away. They pounded us. They talked about how stodgy and old and ineffective we were. The media are not doing that to the Democrats. You watch MSNBC, you look at the New York Times, and they are protecting this ineffective Democratic machine. Again, I go back to what I said in the beginning. It's helpful to Republicans. When we see this ineffective messenger and message from the left, I'm not, too mad about it. I think it's one of those things that's really helping Republicans and helping Donald Trump.
You'd think, though, that the consumer, honestly, if you want to count the voter as like the consumer, would eventually drive this. But we've seen it even in Hollywood where we know that the consumer is saying this is not what we want. But there are people entrenched who are just making the decisions that are deciding we are going to side, weirdly, as big corporations, we are going to side with ideology or pushing something over what our base wants. I mean, we've seen it with family entertainment specifically. You'd think that would kind of play back into politics as well. Now you have people trying to shake that up and change it because they see eventually their bottom line getting lower and lower and lower. You'd think that would happen in Washington, D.C. too, where sure, maybe the people that are making the most noise, the people that were part of the squad, all of those names, sure, they may be your people you put up on the media side, but when everyone has to fall in and agree with some of the more radical nature of this, you're going to lose people. And at some point, do you not have to just go, this is not what our voter wants, therefore we should not be doing this?
Yeah, I think, look, the Republicans figured that out. They figured out that Washington, D.C. is the problem, and they're running against Washington, D.C., and they're running for the rest of America. And the Democrats haven't done that. The leaders of the Democratic Party are all Washington experts. You don't have a lot of the governors in the Democratic Party rising up. There's not individual mayors or people outside of Washington saying, you know, we want Washington to be smaller. Remember, the Democratic Party message is Washington, D.C. is the best, the biggest, and the brightest, and it should control your lives. Republicans are the ones that are saying, let's make Washington smaller. Let's let people decide their own future and their own lives, and that's more popular outside of D.C.
Yeah, we were having this conversation yesterday. I was talking with Will and some other members of our team here, and it just feels like that weight that a lot of these elected officials or even some of the appointed positions, it feels like a lot of that weight has changed. And I mean that in a good way, in the sense of no longer are everyone who is in Washington, D.C. held up as heroes or icons or as, above us, superheroes, if you will. Now we're actually able to see a bit behind the curtain. And I think it's good for the American people to do that. Maybe it also encourages more people to get involved because you go, oh, if they can do it, then certainly I could try.
I think there's no question that what's happening in Washington, D.C., what happened at the State of the Union, is proving to the American people that Washington, D.C. is out of touch and not what they want. Remember, people want a budget that is small. People want to make sure that politicians aren't supporting waste, fraud, and abuse. It feels like the Democrats are defending waste, fraud, and abuse right now. They're talking about trans mice and whether or not that's a good program. The rest of America just thinks that's a waste, and they can't believe someone's defending it.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Seculo program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.